Welcome back to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. Today we welcome Tyrese Johnson-Fisher onto the show, overnight YouTube sensation for his athletic prowess at such a young age, and now an aspiring athlete in the National Football League. Tyrese, welcome to Abnormal.
Hello. Really nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Good stuff, man. Now, with these episodes, I don't normally like doing just a blow-by-blow account of your upbringing and you know, your story. However, I think for this episode, for some context, because I know your story, actually. We're both from similar rugby-ish backgrounds. And I remember that YouTube video going viral when I was still playing. And it was a crazy, crazy moment. And I remember watching it thinking, wow, this guy can ball. But a lot of the listeners won't know what the hell's going on. So I want to give a bit of feedback and a bit of background into your story as to how you got where you are today. And more importantly, what dream are you working on currently?
So I actually grew up in South London, Croydon. I was playing football, so normal football. And my mum, she's a teacher. And so being a teacher, she just thought that where we were growing up, where I was living, it just wasn't safe enough. So her way of combating that was to move us to Dubai. So I moved to Dubai. I went to school out there for a couple of years, and that's why I picked up rugby. So funny story, but I was playing football, I was just running past people, and one of the South African parents, they said, "Hey, I think you should give rugby a go." And so picked up a rugby ball, scored on my first ever touch, and just ran around everybody. And we actually used to train at the Dubai 7 stadium. That was our stadium. That was our home ground. So ended up playing out there, got really, really fast, tried 100 meters. And when I was like 13, I ran, I think it was like 11.8. And so from running 11.8, the teacher said, "How about you run it next week?" Ran at 11.5. She said, "You do realize you'll be top 10 in the country, right?" Moved back to the UK, got a full scholarship to a boarding school, and then ended up continuing rugby out there. Played for Leicester Tigers as soon as I got there because we had like a massive DPP setup, and then ended up pushing through, went viral as you saw in 2015, when ended up doing American football. So I was flirting in between track and rugby, but then American football came up and that just seemed like it would be the best thing for me at the time. And ended up going to the Under Armour All-America game, which was basically the top 100 players in all of football at the time. So if you watch NFL, you got like Jamar Chase, Justin Fields, Kyle Pitts, all these big time 5-star superstars that are at this game playing on ESPN2, which was like in front of millions of people in Orlando. Went to college couple times. So I went to college once in a really, really good Division 1 school. So at the time, and I still am actually, the first non-high schooling football player to ever go Division 1 as a running back, not from America. So that was pretty cool because not many people from Europe have gone Division 1, especially let alone my position. And then went to back to rugby, played for Bristol Bears, and then from there ended up just trying different things because Bristol was an awesome experience, but I realized how much I love football. Ended up going to a junior college, which if you've watched Last Chance U, the exact same as that. So I went to a really crazy place in Mississippi, and then I've just been trying different things, trying to make my mark. Been playing football in Europe, NFL opportunities, CFL opportunities, and then most recently, I actually had a tryout with WWE like a month ago. And so,
Wow.
funny enough, I think the wrestling route is probably the abnormal pivot for me right now.
Mate, that's all. I had no idea about the WWE thing. That's unreal. So that's the kind of thing you're chasing at the moment is WWE.
Yeah, I just from like understanding who I am as an individual, and from knowing that the way that I operate is very much in a space of wanting to truly express yourself. I'm not sure if team sports allows you that freedom. And especially with wrestling, you can create your own gimmick, you can create your own person, and you can be yourself and be proud of being yourself because you know that self won't get judged and it won't get scrutinized as it would in other team sports because you have
Mm.
so many people to take into consideration. And
Te-
also as well, but
Go ahead, go ahead. Sorry, I was about to cut you off.
oh no, no, no problem. I was just gonna say that just to finish off is that with being a wrestler, it just gives you that opportunity as well to travel, but then not just travel. Now, the person that you create that might not necessarily be accepted in team sports. So I think that just allows me to be somebody different, but then also allowing myself to be myself too.
So you mentioned there about the WWE and how you can express yourself more than you can maybe in most team sports. What help us understand then, what do we need to know about you? What's one thing we need to know about you that gives us kind of the best context for this episode moving forward?
So I go by three words: patience, resilience, and persistence. I'm a kid that grew up in the council estate, and now I'm a man, or at least a young adult, who is still pushing despite where he came from. And yes, for sure, I've had to be very adaptable. I've lived in 6 countries now in the last 12 years. So for somebody like that, or somebody like me for where I come from, it's not normal that we leave where we're from. It's not normal that we travel around. It's not normal that we try different things. But I know I'm somebody that, hey, give me an opportunity and you'll see what I can do with it because the amount of work that I put in, the sacrifices that I put in, I'm sure most people, I'd say 99% of people wouldn't be willing to make the sacrifices and put in the work that I do.
What sort of sacrifices have you made so far?
In the last 6 months, I've just been solely NFL dream chasing. So that's meant that I've had to go onto Instagram, find all of these scouts, message them, add them on LinkedIn, message them, email them, and that's meant that I'm training with Olympic sprinters from 9 a.m. all the way until 2 p.m., driving an hour and a half to 2.5 hours each and every day just to be able to get myself an opportunity of getting fast. So now that if I go to an NFL team, I'm unstoppable. But then because I'm now training from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m., that obviously means that I'm incapable of being able to work. Because how are you meant to work if you're training during those full times? So I'd say that not many people will be willing to be in a position for half a year and not make a single, or not even a single penny, but just really small money. Yeah, you get the social media money and yeah, you get these small little things, but they're not enough to sustain yourself. So that's obviously meant you have to cut down on a lot of things. You can't do certain things. And any single little bit of money that you do get is going straight into improving your training gear, improving the quality of your shoes. And I know most people wouldn't be willing to do that.
I love that, man. I mean, it seems, fuck. Well, first of all, thank you for the intro. Like, it's a great. I'm glad we did that context because there's stuff that I didn't know there as well. It seems like from you just talking, then you've had such a frantic, crazy upbringing in general. Now I don't know. We can go more into that later, but I'm talking from a strictly sporting perspective, right? Like it's cool to live in different countries. I live in the other side of the world to you now, and I think it's great to get those experience in different cultures. But you've gone from rugby to American football, back to rugby, back to American football, and now potentially WWE. Now you tell that to anyone, that's and what's that in the space of 10 years?
In the space of, yeah, literally about 10 years, so I think somebody's hoovering. I see. That's the thing when you're living with loads of different people, everyone's doing their own thing at the same time.
Who you
But
living with now?
so at the moment I'm living with family and I've been, yeah, living all over the place. I guess a lot of the time I'm actually traveling, so I'm never usually able to be able to live somewhere by myself in London because most of the time I'm only in London for about like 2 to 3 months of the year. So yeah, I'm literally like all over the place. But funny enough, because not even funny, but because I've been in England for so long, because I got injured in my last game of the season last season, it's just meant that I've had to be here that little bit longer.
So
So what did you?
whereabouts in the world are you where are you floating between? If it's not the UK, where are you traveling to?
So anywhere that I have an opportunity to play. So another sacrifice was last year I was in America and I jumped to that. But for example, I've been in Prague, I've been in America, Berlin, Istanbul, and yeah, just all over. But definitely when it came to last year, I was trying to get myself an NFL opportunity. I realized that the only way to get that opportunity was to actually just be in America.
Mm.
And that meant that I had to have a full-time job to be able to pay for training because I don't know if you know, but training in America isn't cheap. Coaches will charge you like $80+ a month. And now I'm working from say 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. and then basically until 11 p.m. And then I've got training from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then sometimes we had one extra session in between. And this was like 5 or 6 days a week. And you're traveling, because I didn't have a car, I was in Houston. It meant that those journeys were 45 minutes. And a 45-minute journey is about what, $30, $40 each way. So that's like $60 to $80 each day. And so you're doing all of that, trying to find the time to work because you're working international hours. I had clients in Australia, I had clients in England. So you're just trying to basically stay up the whole day to try and catch all of them because that money you need to be able to pay for training. Like my training group, when it comes to the NFL like combine, people are paying roughly anywhere from three to $30,000 a month. And so luckily that I was from the UK, understood my story. He helped me out a little bit, but you're still paying for a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's why I've just been in and around all over the gaff, to be honest.
And what were you doing for work at those times? You said your clients around the world. What work was it?
So the typical work for a person that's come from a sporting background, just sales. Just because you're good at speaking,
Mm.
you're used to being in a team, you're
Hey, it
money
pays well as
motivated.
well. It can pay well, you know.
Yeah, it can pay really, really well. If you're in the right place and the right company, hey, you'll be eating really, really good.
Mate, that's geez, man. That's I mean, I'm getting tired just hearing about your schedule, but I respect it because yeah, I think you're right. You know, I think a lot of people wouldn't commit to that lifestyle. It seems manic. It seems a very crazy lifestyle when there's no outcome is guaranteed. Like
Mm,
and even to this day, right? Like I'm talking to you now, and with all due respect, I'm not talking to Tyrese, the NFL player right now. Now one day, fuck yeah, too right. I hope I am, and from the work that you're putting in, I hope that you get there. So how does that like mentally play on you now? Because I think I have these thoughts as well, and I've had them in the past where you put in this body of work every day, every week, you're stacking days, but there's no guaranteed outcome. There's no guaranteed gold medal at the end of it. There's no guaranteed NFL contract. So how does that play on you mentally?
So I go to schools and I actually try to educate the younger generation on this actual same question, to be honest. And what I usually say is you have to know your why, because once you understand your why, no matter the situation, you're always going to be motivated and you're always going to be driven. A lot of people live without purpose. And now, the moment you live without purpose, when things aren't rosy, how do you stay consistent and how do you stay pushing? So I know my why. Outside of that, one of the most important things that I find for myself is my religion and my connection to God, because I always know that through the dark times, I always have somebody that's willing to stand in my corner. And a lot of people are very, very lonely because they're doing a lot of things by themselves. But with me, I know that I've got a really, really strong connection with God, and I've got a really strong connection to my family. For example, like my mum, that's like my best friend. So I always have somebody to talk to. Got a lot of really good friends as well. And I just try to look at life from a level of a perspective lens, if you get what I'm saying, whereby that lens that I put on to be at the forefront of my mind, to embody who I am, that lens understands where we are in our certain times. Sometimes things aren't meant to go our way. Sometimes things go our way. But it's understanding why certain things happen. Because I think the moment we learn to understand who we are, where we are, where we're trying to get to, and then also understanding the environment around us and how all of those first factors play into the environmental factors, then we get to have a bit of an understanding as to the situation that we're in. For example, I didn't get an opportunity to finish off my season last year. I had a crazy year whereby I mentioned earlier traveling to America. I was trying to do the international pathway program, like you saw with Lewis Rees-Zammit, and I got an invite to the combine. And then I get a message from the people hosting the combine to say that, because you've left college a couple years ago, you're no longer eligible to be able to do this combine. 3 days post combine, they send me a message to say, actually, we made a mistake. You could have done or you can do the combine. And I'm like, gang, the combine's just done. There's a opportunity to try out in front of 32 teams that have missed it. Cool. Okay. I messaged the NFL directly and I just asked them like, hey, is there anywhere else that I can do a combine? Because I need to showcase all of this training that I'm doing because I was training so hard. We're training 2 to 3 times a day, to be honest, 6 days a week for a good 2 to 3 month block. And I'm messaging every single college, asking them, hey, is there an opportunity that I can do your pro day? I'm out here messaging every agent in the world, asking them, hey, hey, hey. But luckily, there was a lady who was working as a football coach, one of the only female football coaches in college football. And she ended up getting me an opportunity to be able to do a pro day at their school. And so I get the news on Friday. The pro day is on Tuesday. So then I end up flying out on the Saturday straight to New York. And then and then on the Monday I sign a contract with an NFL agent. And then I'm literally at home in the hotel and I'm just there trying to figure out, hey, why is it raining? Why is it 10 degrees on the day that I'm going to do my pro day? And understanding that was painful. But then maybe those teams weren't for me that were there. Maybe I wasn't where I needed to be as a football player and I would have exposed myself. Like there are so many things that you can factor in understanding that because then I ended up having to come back to England, signed with a European team, and then in signing for the European team, I'm out there and basically I'd signed with them before I'd gone to America, well, before I had done all of this NFL stuff, and I told them what I was doing. But now when I go out there, I get told that I'm going to be not guaranteed my spot because they have to give an opportunity to the guy that they had to sign because they didn't think that I was going to be there. And then I have to wait 3 games. I go out on the fourth game of the season and I score on the first drive of the game. Boom, everything was worth it for a moment because then we get to the end of the third quarter, going on to the fourth quarter, and then I broke my foot. And so you're trying to figure out like, what the hell? And you're still in your head. You're like, I made these sacrifices. You asked me to be humble. God, you asked me to be able to put you before myself, put you before my own happiness. And now we're here and I've broken my foot. I've not got into the NFL. So then I had to come back to England. I get back to England. I'm praying. I'm just like, God, I'm here as your humble servant. Is there a way that you could just please show me the light? Show me where I need to be. Show me what I need to do to help me elevate and get to the place that I'm trying to get to. And then the next day I get a message from my old rugby agent who's also recruiting in the NFL, and he goes, "Hey, the Jacksonville Jaguars want to try you out." I'm like, "Whoa!" So like, there are so many different things that I could say. It's just the way everything comes together. It's just insane, to be honest.
It's just the life of a pro athlete. You know, the highs are so high and the lows are so low. And I don't think that's unique to pro athletes. You know, since I've retired, it's you do realize that that's just life. At the end of the day,
Mm,
that is just life. The highs are high, the lows are low, but don't take the highs too high, don't take the lows too low. And I want to
100%.
get into the NFL thing, right? I want to talk about, because I don't know too much about it. I did the old NFL draft when, as in the fantasy draft, when I was back in the UK with a group of friends, and that's about it.
Sure.
Played Madden on PlayStation. But it seems to me, like all American sports, there's a very clear pathway, right, for getting into the NFL. You go to college, you have the draft system, you get drafted by the teams with the lottery picks and all that sort of stuff. Same with basketball, same with American football, same with baseball as well, I believe. Is it same with
Baseball, yeah.
baseball? Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're outside of that, which you are, what does that pathway look like? Like, you're talking about all these teams in Europe and all these trial days and things like that, but like what is the realistic pathway to get into the NFL from a non-American athlete who isn't in the fully fledged college system?
The most consistent way is the International Pathway Program. It's a group, it's basically an argument that it's a subsidiary of the NFL, where it is basically the NFL, but just the subsidiary of it. And they help get non-Americans into the NFL. So they end up having like maybe a combine, or they will like go to different countries and try people out. So basically get them to do like a 40 in front of them, see how they move, see how they jump, and then figure out, hey, if we put this in front of an NFL team, would the NFL team sign them? And so then they take them over to Florida for a couple months, train them up, and then you do a thing called a pro day. And now the pro day is basically all of the things that I mentioned, but just a little bit more specialized for position. But then there is still like general things like you got a 40-yard dash,
Mm.
the broad jump, and all of these small things as well in between that. So they basically try and prepare you. So if you have every NFL team that is there at the pro day, they can see the body of work that you do. But now, if you're outside of that, it's even harder because now you have to play in Europe because as a European, for example, getting into the minor leagues. So, for example, you've got the XFL, and the XFL was basically like the spring league, and that's like basically a bunch of guys that are doing the same thing as the NFL, but a lot of them have come from like NFL training camps, so guys that have been cut from the NFL, and so
Right.
now if
So
you're a
they were in the
European,
teams, but then they get cut, and now they're in the spring league.
oh, I'd say a lot of the guys, you
Hmm.
do have obviously a lot of guys that didn't get into the NFL, so they've gone straight from college. But as you just said, and if you think about saying that, because you have a lot of guys that have been cut from the NFL, if you're a European, how are you ever going to get onto that level? Or why would a team give you an opportunity? Doesn't make sense, right? So that's what makes it so difficult. And as well, especially playing in Europe, now you want to be able to showcase what you can do, and you may have a monster season, but now the argument from an NFL team is, who are you playing?
Mm. It's in Europe.
It's it's in Europe.
Yeah.
So that's where the pathway just becomes very, very tricky. So connections is one thing, having a good agent is one thing. Like there are so many factors, and just trying to, first of all, get seen, but then getting an opportunity that's gonna get you there, if that makes sense.
And how much of it in American sport, especially in the NFL, is just physical metrics, like the things you mentioned there that you do on pro days and the things they do on the what's it called when all the college athletes go to the combine.
Yeah.
It's all like you say, 40-yard dash, 100-kilo bench, all that vertical. Like, obviously coming from a rugby background yourself as well, a lot of you couldn't do that in rugby because so much of it is intangibles. It's like reading the game, decision making, dealing with things under pressure, all that sort of stuff, right? It seems like from the outside, a very English perspective, that in the NFL or in football, it's all just based off how athletic you are, and then you progress from that. Am I right in saying that, or have I got that wrong?
I'd say to a degree you are right. In certain positions like the O lineman, so the big fat guys at the
Hmm.
front and the big D linemen, the big fat guys from the back, pause. But if you look at it from there, a lot of those guys can be recruited strictly off just physical metrics because if you get somebody that's like 6'7", they're an absolute monster. They maybe weigh like 125 kg and they're just straight muscle. There aren't many of them in the world. But then if you get a 5'10" running back, yeah, he's fast, but is he much different to what we have in America?
Mm. So what
So
else are they looking for then? If they go, because I've read quite a bit about you, and you've said quite a lot that your position is very saturated. You're a running back. What's your build? Are you 5'10"? What's your dimensions? 5'10"?
I'm 5'10" with shoes.
With
And
shoes, important.
yeah, with shoes. Right now I'm about like 94, 95 kg.
So 94
And
kegs, 5'10". So there will be a lot of people similar to you in the US, right? So what else are they looking for?
and then it just comes down to how fast are you? So what's your 40-yard dash? The jump maybe, but it's more like what's your 40? And then it's just a matter of what does your film look like? Where have you played? And especially with like America, it's like, for example, I'll give you the perfect example. If you're a rugby player
Hmm.
and you want to get into the Prem, say the Prem hold a draft, you get two wingers. One winger from a small comprehensive school in Cornwall, and then you get another winger from Sedba. Most teams are going to take the Sedba one, right?
Mm.
Because that would obviously mean that the Sedba person has played against better opposition, so they're more likely going to be ready when it comes to actually playing in the Prem week in, week out against Leicester Tigers and Bristol Bears. But the one from the small comprehensive school, he may have a higher ceiling. He may have a higher drive because maybe the Sedba guys had everything easy. So he's never really had to work that hard because he's always just had to show up and go through the coaching that he's given. So then all of these factors come into play, but they're more likely 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick the Sedba guy. And it's risk. As an NFL coach, I need to keep my job. So if I need to keep my job, which player is going to give me the least risk? When you understand that from the business point of view, things become a lot less personal.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like all sports, the sooner you realize it's a business, the sooner you kind of get a clearer conscience and you can kind of move on from situations and decisions a lot easier.
Mm.
So you mentioned the international player pathway there. Now there have been some pretty famous ones from the rugby world, at least. Louis Rees-Zammit, he's the most recent one, I believe. Christian Wade, did they both go through this pathway?
Yeah, they both went to the pathway.
And how's that? I know Christian Wade is now back in rugby, but Louis Rees-Zammit, how's he faring at the moment in the world of sort of trying to make it to the NFL? You'll know a lot more about this than I will.
Yeah, no, Lewis is trying. I guess it's just a case of when you're in an NFL building, it's all about reps. In rugby, it doesn't matter. The only time that where you are placed in the depth chart matters is when it comes to team selection and first team versus the rest. But in the NFL, say for example, you go for a period, so that period basically will be like, because it's not free flow and it's just plays, you may have 16 plays, right?
Mm.
And now out of those 16 plays, I'm just throwing numbers out here, but on average, it would be like 8 of those plays would go to the person that starts. And now you've got 8 other reps to be shared by maybe 4, 5, 6 people. So then you're only maybe getting 1 or 2 reps. And then the reps that you do get are never going to be with the first team guys, ever. if you're in Lewis's position. In rugby, I was in the first team, but I wasn't starting. But sometimes I was on the wing when Charles Piatel was at fullback. You wouldn't get that in the NFL. So now when you are getting your reps, how good are those quality reps? And so that's where I think Lewis is just kind of having that problem is he's trying to get opportunities. You know, this is a brand new sport. He hasn't had the opportunity to go to college. He hasn't had the opportunity to play in Europe. So he hasn't really had the opportunity to play, just train. And so trying to break that is where it gets very, very difficult, especially as well when you've got money on the line because now, of course, you playing, you could end up having a really high ceiling. But if you've just gone and spent a draft pick on somebody, that's a really valuable asset. And who are you going to play more? The international guy or the guy that you spent a draft pick on? Business.
How much is a NFL contract worth? Because I hear all of this stuff about the international player pathways, especially coming from rugby, where sometimes the money's not great, especially compared to American sports. So the contracts that you're fighting for at the moment and that you're hoping to get in your career, I know there's like practice squad, training squad, first team spot. Talk us through what's the actual breakdown? Like, what's the bare minimum that NFL players will be earning right now?
If I remember right, and somebody's probably going to tell me that I'm wrong, I think the lowest salary you can get is like 275K a year from being in a practice squad. But then you have a bunch of different contracts because now when you get drafted, like say for example, you get drafted in like the top 5, top 10, a lot of those guys will have like 3 or 4 year contracts that are worth like 30, 40 million. And then you're obviously trying to get your contract re-upped. So then you're trying to negotiate a new contract. And for example, like for a running back, Saquon Barkley, our numbers are terrible right now. I'm pretty sure his contract was like maybe just over 16, 17 million a year. And that's the highest paid running back. But then, for example, Myles Garrett, who's the defensive end, he signed his contract and he's getting like 40 million a year, for example. So, and then quarterbacks, you're getting guys that are getting paid like 60 million a year. So it's very much position dependent. And that's when it does get quite interesting and understanding how when you figure out who gets paid the most, then you start to figure out who is the most valuable. And then when you figure that out, you start figuring out who isn't the most valuable. And the running back is not the most valuable because the contracts on average would say so. Because you can be easily replaced because there are so many of you. And so when you start understanding the business of sports, you start taking things a little less personally.
Like you say the names there, obviously Saquon Barkley, I know, or I don't know personally, but obviously I know his name. Now he's known for being a bit of a beast, right? And I agree that in the US, there are just so many athletes and a sport that is based off of literally being an athlete, running quick, lifting heavy weights, jumping high. Saquon Barkley is pretty famous for his like videos in the gym and all that sort of stuff. Do you compare yourself to guys like that in your position and sort of see how your numbers match up against them?
So guys like that is who I'm trying to be like. Obviously Saquon, he is about 6 foot or just over. So he's a really freak build because to be that size and to be able to do what he does on the field, that's not normal. But you still want to be able to be like somebody like Saquon. So I look at the way I play and I try to be like him. I look at NFL numbers. And that's why when I didn't get into the NFL in 2022, so I had an NFL International Pathway Program combine that I got involved in. And like all of my numbers were top 10 as a running back compared to the guys in the NFL draft that year. So if you're thinking about it, that's NFL numbers. I'm not even thinking, that's straight NFL numbers in every category. So when I didn't get my NFL contract or get the opportunity to g- be part of the NFL IPP, hey, gang, that hurt because you asked for numbers, the numbers came, but now the argument as to why I didn't get selected was the position's oversaturated. So, of course, you compare yourself to these guys, but as a European, you can't because now your numbers need to be better than those guys. And I'm not making excuses here, but how do you do that on a full-time job, not in America as well? Because even when I did have a full-time job and I was living in America, training with Americans, my numbers got better straight away. But remember, I still had to do a full-time job. I wasn't just
Mm.
solely focusing on training.
You're self-funding that whole thing, right?
Self-funding the entire thing, paying for my own rent because I was renting an apartment. I was renting a room in a house. You know, you're paying for your physio, you're paying for your massages, like all of these things that you have to do and pay for. You're self-funding. Whereas over there in America, a lot of them will have a contract with an agent, and so your agent will basically pay for your training, and then after the whole NFL process and you do get drafted, now you will give your agent basically that loan back
Mm.
financially. So it's a big difference. But then now you have to figure out other factors. When you do end up doing your combine or your pro day, what's the weather like? Where is it? So all of these little factors makes it so it's like, yeah, you try to compare yourself, but comparison is a thief of joy because if you do try to compare yourself, you just know that you're going to be disappointed because it's not fair.
You mentioned the weather there. Why do you mention that? Because if it's outside, your times won't be a PB. It won't be quick enough, basically.
Essentially, it's like if you're playing a game of rugby and we're comparing a game in the Prem in the winter and a game in the Prem in the summer. In the summer, you're going to probably get fast, quick rugby and people are going to want to pass it down the line. But then now, if you're playing a game in the winter and it's raining and it's maybe muddy, it's probably going to be a bit of more of a forwards game and you're going to want to maul it a bit more. There's going to be a lot more or a lot less passes and you're going to keep it really tight. Maybe it's a bit more of a kicking game. It's the same thing when it comes to a combine because now if you're running in the rain, it's probably cold. Your body will seize up a little bit. And each step that you're putting into the ground, you're not getting the right feedback from the
Mm.
ground. And then if it's in the sun, you're a bit warmer, your muscles are warmer. Maybe your endorphins raise a little bit more, and you're able to push through with that weather. Maybe there's wind, or maybe there's less wind. Maybe that wind helps you move forward. Maybe that wind moves you back. But then, if you're indoors, you're in the best situation ever because you're not going to have any of those factors.
Yeah.
And what's been annoying is that both of my NFL opportunities with the Jacksonville Jaguars and my pro day, the exact same weather conditions rain, 10 degrees, but the Jacksonville Jaguars was worse because it was on the grass. And usually we run on the AstroTurf. So if it's raining, it's 10 degrees and it's muddy, how do you expect somebody to run a 4-2 or 4-3? It's impossible. Impossible.
And when you're talking about those fine margins, like you're coming from Europe, you're trying to break it, you haven't been through the system. And when you're talking about a 40-yard dash and the difference between a 4.6 and a 4.2, less than half a second, I guess you do have to take all those things into consideration. Like it really does make a difference being on a cold turf versus a bone dry, warm indoor Astro with purchase. Yeah, man, fuck it. It sounds brutal, to be very honest with you. Like, it sounds savage not being part of that pathway.
Uh,
And if that's your dream and trying to chase that dream, you know, like all things, all good things worth having don't come easy. But um, has this always been your dream then to play in the NFL? Like, when you were growing up, were you a fan of American football, or was this because of realizing your athletic ability and then this was a door that got open to you eventually?
so I'd say the latter. I loved football growing up and like when I was in Dubai and I was playing football, I was playing in, Glenn Hoddle. So I was playing in
Mm.
his academy. I was also part of a team called Al Wasl. So they were basically in the UAE's first division, for example. And Maradona was actually the first team coach when I was there. So I used
Wow.
to go to training every day and see Maradona,
That's
which is
insane.
mental, absolutely mental. You used to go into the training ground and you just got like cameras left, right, center. So football was the dream. I had a lot of Premier League teams that reached out and wanted to get me over. It was just a case of the fact that I was good at rugby, and I just saw rugby as being something that I thought I could revolutionize. And I thought that me bringing my speed, the difference in where I came from, I could open rugby out to more young black players to potentially get into rugby that many of us have been told that we shouldn't.
Mm.
And what makes that so interesting is I remember when I was living in England, there was a rugby game on, I think it was a Harlequins game and something. And I was just watching rugby and I was just like, with my family, like, this is such a private school sport. How does anybody ever get into it? Like 2, 3 years later, I'm playing rugby. But then the thing was, I was at a private school in Dubai. So maybe that was what it was. So maybe that's why it was so accessible. And so I just saw myself coming into rugby and trying to bridge that gap, wanting to make it more inclusive. And then obviously, like I say, American football just happened. Not even that track. I was a national champion when at the time, so 2014, I was the second fastest 14 or 15-year-old of all time in the
Wow.
UK at the time. So that was the dream. And I was thinking about the Olympics, but then rugby kept flirting with me. So I was just like, I went viral and I was just like, maybe I had to play rugby. Maybe rugby's the dream. Track, football, so like American football. So everything just keeps coming in around me. But I guess that's the problem of kind of being multi-sport talented is that now it's hard to find a direction. But then I've said that I've tried to make the right decision given all of the situations and possibilities around me each time that I've had a decision to make.
It seems crazy. The more and more I listen to you and hear you talk about your different sports and things, it feels like your dreams or the thing that you're chasing have not been made for you, but like your outside environment seems to have influenced what you're chasing at the time, which is completely natural. Like you going viral, then I guess led to pro rugby contracts and giving that a go, even though your love was football. Then track has led you to also American football, and you saw some doors opening there, and then you were chasing that, and then back to rugby. It's like it seems. Like, do you have something inside of you that you've always wanted to do since you were growing up that is really your dream that is your dream and no one else's and that people don't know about yet?
I'd say my dream has just always been to revolutionize the human and letting the human know that they can do anything that's possible, not even anything that's possible. They can do anything that they truly believe because it's come from their heart. Funny enough, when I was growing up, I actually wanted to be a prime minister. That was my first dream, to
Love
be
that.
honest. I wanted to be a politician. And then sport found me because I hate sport. So sport found me. And I guess every single time that I've just jumped into something that revolutionized has always been in the back of my head. And wanting to let people know as well that, hey, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can do anything that you want. Very abnormal. But then part of it as well is understanding that you're not meant to try different things. The world tells you that you need to stay in your lane and not swerve outside of it. But I've always been somebody that's followed my heart, followed what I believe in, and I've tried not to be influenced by other people's opinions because most other people's opinions are just a reflection of their own insecurities. Because most other people wouldn't be willing to step outside of their comfort zone and be comfortable in that place. So I've always thought of myself to be somebody that, hey, if I have a dream or I want to do something, I'm going to show you that I could do it. I managed to play now 4 sports at a very, very high level. Now going into wrestling, most people wouldn't have the confidence to step out and try and even play two at a high level, let alone three, let alone five. So I've just always been somebody that's believed in myself. And because I know that I have God by my side, sky's the limit.
And the wrestling thing you mentioned there, is this something that you can do alongside still trying to make it into the NFL? Is that what the plan is, or is it now all in on wrestling?
I say that today, I think it's one or the other because the wrestling is going to require a crazy amount of training. I've never done a sport that's required solely body movement in a small space. No running, or yeah, less running, not even running. So, and obviously with the NFL, like I'm 25, I'm having calls with my agent, and now he's saying, you're getting a little bit old. 25. If you end up getting an opportunity to try out for somebody, you're going to be 26. Like usually with the IPP, they give you like 3 with an extension of a 4-year contract, and that's just to be in the practice squad. So then that gives you 3 good years to develop. And the aim is after those 3 years of getting you into the first team. So now let's do the maths. If I'm 26 getting the chance to try out for the IPP, I'd probably then have to break into the team at like 29, 30. And if you've got young guys coming in at 21, 22, what is the realisticness? Is that a word? Is that
How
realistic?
realistic? Yeah.
How realistic, there we go. How realistic is it for you to be able to get into the NFL? So I'm just looking at all the maths, I'm trying to do all the calculations, and I can just say, like, it's obviously heartbreaking because I've always wanted to be in the NFL, really, since I started the sport. That's always and only ever been the dream. But I'm just tired of not being able to really build foundations in my life because you're going to play in Europe for a couple of months. You're making really minimal money to just continue to play your dream. And that's fine if people want to do that. Hey, I've got all the love for it. I love what people are doing, but I have my own goals and aspirations, and I want to start building my life, and I want to start building up a life that allows a family to be able to be started with me at the heart of it or me at the top of it. And I can't do that bouncing between Europe and home for a couple of months because that's just not enough money. It's not enough stability. So I think wrestling can give me that stability, but then also as well, I can thrive long term with it. So it's just understanding how I want to get there for sure. And obviously, I'd love to still play the football, but it just doesn't look realistic right now.
And what's that? How's that opportunity come about then? Is this something your agents brought you, or is this just something that you've seen you're pursuing yourself? How has it gone from chasing the NFL to now chasing WWE?
So in 2019, funny enough, I was at Bristol. I get a message from somebody that I used to know, and they asked me, "Hey, WWE be interested in getting you over?" And I was about 2 months into my Bristol Bears contract. I was only 19 years of age, and I was just like, "Hey, WWE is right here. I've just left America to come play professional rugby. How am I gonna do this?" And but then I just thought I've moved around too much. Rugby at the time I thought was gonna be my long term, and then I just came to the real. I realized that it just didn't really make any sense to make that transition that early. And then in January of this year, I said I'm training like every single day. I'm driving an hour and a half, tired, I'm grinding. I went to Tenerife and spent like $1,000 to go and train out there with the track team because they're all Olympic sprinters. So I'm out here funding everything myself with no money. So then I'm just like, I need an opportunity like NFL. I'm messaging all these coaches. Nobody's getting back to me. My agent is just not really getting me opportunities at this point. And so I see the message on Instagram. I'm like, hey, this has got to be some fake account. I go onto the profile. It's like, nah, somebody's having me on. I'm scrolling. I'm seeing posts from years ago. I'm scrolling. And I'm seeing, okay, this is actually real. And then I got onto a call with the WWE, and they basically expressed that they've been watching me for years, and it was just a matter of timing. And at the time, I just thought, yeah, what can I lose at the end of the day? Go to a tryout, maybe not get it. Go to a tryout, I get it. But at least I can say that I did it. And yeah, I ended up going to the tryout. Had one of the best times of my life. Met Triple H and met
Sick.
so many awesome wrestlers that have come through the WWE and got to see what WWE looked like in person. And I just think that now is maybe that time for a new pivot that's pretty much very abnormal.
Hey man, I love that honesty. Love that honesty. And
Thank you.
maybe this is the start, you know. This is the podcast episode where we're talking to future NFL prospect when actually in a year's time it's going to be Tyrese on the TVs fighting against Logan Paul in the WWE.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible at
Hey,
all.
nothing's impossible, man. One thing I want to touch on before moving on is I mentioned at the start this video, right? This video that got you viral, and I know you've spoken about it a shitload before in other interviews and all that sort of stuff. Now, for the listeners, there's a video on the England Rugby YouTube channel, and England Rugby have got about 300,000 subscribers. They've obviously done a lot. They've won the World Cup. They've got into World Cup finals. They've beaten New Zealand multiple times, had historic moments in England Rugby. Now, your video is to this day the most watched video on the England Rugby YouTube page by some margin. It's over double the views of the next most popular video, which is crazy to think about. It's more popular than Johnny Wilkinson's drop goal in 2003 to win the World Cup. It's more popular than the semi-final highlights of England versus New Zealand in that classic in those World Cups. And then number one, top of the pile is you scoring, was it 4 tries for your under 15s cup final or something like that in school?
Yeah.
Talk us through when that was all going down. What was going on in your mind? How did it happen? But more importantly, how did that change things for you in your life?
So at the time I was at boarding school, and say I'm somebody that just tries and does everything. So I was actually involved in the school play, and I end up speaking to the matron. So the matron is like the mother of like the boarding house, and I end up asking her, "Hey, I'm so tired. Can I just skip class, please, and let me just sleep? I've got the play tonight." And to my luck, she said, "Yeah." So then I'm in bed and I'm trying to close my eyes. I just keep hearing ping, ping, ping. So then I check out my phone. It's a bunch of Facebook messages, blah, whatever. I try to go back to sleep. Ping, ping, ping. I look at my phone. I'm getting messages from everybody saying, "Hey, have you seen this video?" And so I look at it, and then it had 100,000 views at the time of like maybe being available for like 10 to 15 minutes. And 100K views in 2015 was insane. Like now it's just so normalized. But back then it was so insane. And then I just decided, I'm going to stay up and just message some people back. I check after maybe an hour, and it's got like 600, 700,000 views. And then it just kept going up and up. Like, pretty sure on Facebook, it had like over 30 million views alone.
Jeez.
And from there, that's when my life really did change, to be honest, because like I say, I was just playing rugby for fun. And it just was so funny that that video happened to go viral, because I was having games of scoring like 8, like 6, 7 tries. I think in that season, I scored like over 60 tries in like, I don't know, maybe 15 games or something. That I was just
Jesus.
going stupid. And I think because of that, it just changed the way that I thought, because I only saw rugby as something for fun. and now I'm seeing it as maybe a profession because track is my future profession because I knew that was what I really really loved. But then things started getting difficult because now, as much as there's love, there's always hate. I'm seeing messages from people that were at school, people that I thought were my friends, and now I see them in the comments putting in all this hate about me. I'm seeing the relationships around me with people who I thought were close, and I see them feeling threatened, which I don't see why you should feel threatened because I wasn't the one that posted that video. And so now everything around me changed, and it wasn't me that had. So that's what made that whole experience so hard. And I was going to schools now to obviously play games, and it went from maybe the coaches knowing who I was to now the whole school knew who I was. And so now loads of people are watching the games. And also that's met with racism too. Like you're on the side, you're on the pitch, you're seeing people with doing like monkey thingies and whatever. And you're just there trying to be a 15, 16-year-old kid and try and play.
It's fucking
So
ridiculous.
that was what was so mad. But then also as well, I can't say all of it was bad because now I do end up getting a bunch of rugby agents trying to sign me, which was very rare for being that young to get signed.
Mm.
And I was also sponsored by Adidas full time. I was sponsored by Optimum Nutrition. A bunch of companies wanted to reach out and I wanted to work with me. So, and obviously I had like interviews with like really, really massive publications. So yeah, my life did flip around, but then maybe I'm not sure how good it was that it did because that just made my mind all over the place because I couldn't quite figure out where I wanted to go because again, like I said, I tried to understand things. And that's how I started dealing with things from a young age was I was trying to understand why did I go viral? And was the reason that I went viral the reason that's going to mean that I'm going to have to stay into rugby because maybe this is the path for me because you've
Mm.
opened this up for me, God. So trying to understand all of that was so weird and so tough. And then I end up obviously getting fast tracked straight into the academy at like 15 with the under 18s at Leicester Tigers. But then I'm involved. I get into the academy, and some of the guys are saying, "Hey, how did you go viral? You didn't deserve to go viral." So it's like now I'm finally got my opportunity to be in a professional setup, and the people that I've always looked up to and wanted to be like, now they're hating on me too. And so it's just like, I'm not even trying to play victim here, but it was just like why did I go viral? What was the reason for it? And then when I ended up going to American football, that felt like the why, because that was meant to be the thing that got me exposed to change.
Mm.
Because, like I say, it's just so tough being in different environments when the people around you that were meant to be there and support you and be there to help you get through this. Now, those people ended up turning into enemies as well.
Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if that video didn't exist?
Yeah, I think if that video didn't exist, I'd have had a lot less expectations and a lot less people would have tried to steer me into different directions. So that would have meant that I could have focused on track and not had to think elsewhere or otherwise. And also, it could have meant that I could have stayed in rugby and I wasn't always judged on that video. So then I would have had time to develop because now, because I went viral, I'm pretty sure Tigers saw me as trying to get into the first team at maybe 17 or 18, maybe I would have been able to play outside centre still. But because they saw that fast track, now I was forced onto the wing because that's probably the fastest progression into getting to the first team. So now that really slowed down my development because I was playing a position that I
Mm.
didn't really love. I didn't love playing on the wing. I enjoyed outside centre. Yeah, I needed to develop, but yeah, I need to learn how to pass, tackle, all of that stuff. But just give me time because I would have eventually have got it. But because I was forced onto the wing, I was playing a position I didn't want to play and it felt like I was pushed up there. I think that really did knock my confidence for sure.
Now, Tyrese, this whole conversation has been incredibly interesting. there's so many different chapters of your life, and you're only 25 years old. And I came into this with an expectation of only talking about kind of NFL progression and what that pathway looks like, and have finished it with a detailed breakdown of your background, your upbringing, NFL, rugby, social media, and WWE. So I just want to thank you, mate, for being transparent and opening up like that. It was a really interesting conversation, and yeah, I'm sure whatever you decide to do will eventually work out. You seem like very wise for your years, and a lot has happened that has given you a really, I'd say, a solid head on your shoulders. Now, I've got one question which I ask all my guests before finishing the talk. As you know, the podcast is called Abnormal. It's for normal people who want to do abnormal thing. And I think you and all my listeners will agree that after this conversation, you are the definition of that. So for those people out there listening, wanting to do something abnormal in their lives, what would your one piece of advice be to them?
My one piece of advice would be, know who you are, spend time investing in that. Then as soon as you figure out who you are, that will give you the platform to be the best version of yourself. And the best version of yourself can do anything they set their minds to, because it doesn't matter what other people think. The only thing that matters is how you view yourself and how close you are to the people around you, to let them know that you are going to chase the dream that you set your eyes on.
I love that, man. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And honestly, I really hope we can do this again in a year or two's time, in between your WWE shows. And maybe we'll look back on this and smile at the lessons we've learned together on this talk. So thank you again, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.